Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the council meeting of July the 11th, 2023. Noting that attendance has been taken. We have an agenda before us that has an addendum. Looking for someone to make the motion, Councillor Kyle, to accept the addendum. Or I'm sorry, to accept the agenda the way it stands.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For you, moved by myself, seconded by Councilor McAlpine, that the agenda and addendum for the County of Brant Council meeting of July 11th, 2023, County of Brant Council meeting be approved.
Nothing more to be added. Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Takes us to number 3, declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone have any? If one crops up, please let me be the first to know. Delegations, 4.1, which is 283 McLean School Road. Who's here to speak to that? Yes, sir. If you want to state your name, please, and your address, just for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is John Arians. I'm a semi-retired plant with Marquegas IBI. My office is in downtown Hamilton, sir.
Thank you.
I'm here on behalf of the owner of this property. His name is Hugh McNeil. Hugh actually owns 4 farms in Brant County, and on his behalf, we are seeking 3 severances. 2 severances will be for vacant lots. 1 will be removing the existing farmhouse from this property. This is the total farm that Mr. McNeil owns. He has a cow-calf operation on this property. He uses most of the fields for pasture and for growing hay. And I think it's Wagoos and Speckled Park that he currently has on this particular property. This was the original severance. I should point out that these lands are designated rural residential in your old official plan, which still permits severances for estate lot type purposes. So that strip of frontage along McLean School Road is designated for estate residential or rural residential purposes. You see the green on the left-hand side of the slide. That represents a buffer from a natural feature, which is predominantly on the neighbor to the west, but the tree line does extend about 2 meters on Mr. McNeil's property as well. That was the original severance application, and it's been revised. We've moved the development further to the east, creating the 2 vacant lots, and then the existing farmhouse will also be removed, as it also is part of the rural residential strip. The recommendation report prepared by staff fully supports this scheme, this development concept, and we're here in support as well. But Mr. McNeil asked me to provide his objections to what is proposed on the vacant agricultural remnant parcel to the west. This is the lands shown in green on this slide, which are proposed to be rezoned natural heritage. Our client has asked us to ask you if that portion can remain agriculture. There's no intention to have any buildings or anything on it. The property is currently used for pasture and will continue to be used for pasture. But by removing the former farmhouse and creating that as a rural residential lot, we do require a new access onto the farm property. And this would be the ultimate location for the farm access, given the hilly topography of the roads and the need for proper sight lines. So from that standpoint, while the natural heritage designation may permit agricultural uses, Mr. McNeil still wishes to retain actual agricultural zoning. So the vegetative buffer will remain an agricultural use and will continue to be used for pasture and possibly growing of hay. That is what exists today, and that's what will continue. And as I indicated, a new farm access is also required. Now, many municipalities exempt farmers from having to provide vegetative buffers. And I've just provided a precedent here from the region of Niagara. And of course, Niagara is famous for tender fruit soils and, grape and fruit production. And in the new regional official plan, and this is from December of 2022, so it's only 5 months old. It basically says that nothing in this plan is intended to limit the ability of existing agricultural uses to continue on a site. And as well, agriculturally related uses, and on-farm diversified uses that are permitted in accordance with that plan are exempt from the requirement of having to establish a natural self-sustaining vegetation buffer as long as that land continues to be used for agricultural purposes. So I thought I would share that with you as a very innovative way of letting farmers continue to be farmers, even if it's on-farm diversification or farm-related commercial or industrial. No vegetative buffers are required for those purposes. So on behalf of our client, this is the photograph of the area that would be zoned natural heritage. And on behalf of our client, we're respectfully requesting that the staff recommendation be approved, that these lots be zoned appropriately, but that the natural heritage zoning be removed from that westerly corner of the property. Those are my submissions, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the presenter from council? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking for a motion to refer to 7.1, please. Councillor Bell, Councillor Kyle, all those in favor? Thank you. We'll move on to property known as 369 Scenic Drive. Who's here to speak to that, Christian? And again, just for the record, your name and your address, please.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Christian Simonides. I'm a planner with Arcadis. Here on behalf of our client, who is the owner of the subject property, 369 Scenic Drive. I'd first like to say thank you to council for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm also joined by Douglas Stewart, who is here in support of the application and is the project manager on this file for the consulting team. I'd also like to say thank you to county staff as well. We've certainly worked very closely with them over the last several months, and I will get right into my presentation. So I'm going to leave this up temporarily, but I'm going to go to the next slide here quickly. So the application is for a zoning bylaw amendment in order to facilitate a future creation of a lot, so future consent application. As you can see here on your screen, the zoning bylaw amendment would implement the rural residential land use designation, and we would be rezoning that to rural residential in order to permit an estate residential dwelling unit. As you can see on your screen, the lot configuration that is proposed is certainly irregular. However, it is our opinion that this conforms with the county's official plan natural heritage designation and the policies that are associated with it, as the proposed lot lines and the development are located outside of the provincially significant wetland, as well as the woodland. There's also the implementation of a 30-meter buffer, as you can see on your screen with the image here. That is, one, directed by the province, but two, is part of the vegetative 30-meter zone in the official plan, which we have implemented in order to provide that buffer between the natural heritage features. I would also note too that the proposed lot configuration will meet the minimum lot frontage of 40 meters for the proposed rural residential zoning, as well as the minimum lot area of 4,000 square meters. So just to repeat, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for this new lot will meet both the minimum lot frontages and the minimum lot area. As you can see as well on your screen, the proposed single detached building as well as the septic bed will be located to the rear of the new lot. Again, based on the configuration of this lot, that is the optimal place for these features. So the second point to consider for this application, so the sightline distance, and I know it was mentioned at the public information meeting last month, and I would like to reinforce that the sightline distance of 120 meters from the proposed access can be achieved as per the site development plan that was submitted as part of this application. A qualified engineer prepared this from J.H. Cahoon Engineering, and it is their opinion that this will meet the 120-meter sightline distance. As you can see on the bottom left of the image there, the little hash marks, that is where minor grading is required on the adjacent property in order to achieve that 120-meter sightline distance. The applicant has received written permission in a letter from the adjacent landowner, and they are supportive of that grading on the adjacent lot there to achieve the sightline distance. And also, just to add, the access location of the new driveway the proposed driveway rather, will be finalized through the county's access permit process at the consent application stage. So that would certainly be addressed as a condition of approval during that time. Now, I think the next, and to me, one of the most important key aspects to consider is that this will provide housing. Certainly, there's a need for housing in the county and the province. This is an opportunity to provide housing to diversity and supply within the county of Brant as directed by the province. Further, it is our opinion that this is underutilized land that is designated for rural residential development in the official plan, the 2012 official plan. And we can certainly provide that housing outside of the protected environmental features. Now, before I conclude my my presentation rather, I would note that the applicant has gone through an extensive process and great lengths to get to this point in the process based on a number of studies and plans and reports that have been submitted as part of this zoning bylaw amendment application. An MDS report was submitted and it complies with that. Hydrogeological assessment was also submitted, which it was determined that the quality and quantity is sufficient and the quality of groundwater would not be impacted. Stage 1 and Stage 2 archaeological assessments were also prepared. No further studies are required on that end. Again, back to the sight lines, we have a qualified engineer on the team that certainly supports that it can be achieved. It conforms to the official plan. Again, the lot configuration is a direct result of the natural heritage policies and designation on the site. And as a result, this application, in our opinion, would enhance the subject property than that currently exists today, because a number of mitigation measures would be implemented from the scoped environmental impact statement that was also submitted as part of this application. I would also like to reiterate too that the proposed new lot would meet the criteria for the frontage and area for the proposed rural residential zoning. And again, I believe that this application would certainly enhance what currently exists today, which is a sliver of an agricultural piece. However, due to the topography and of the land, that certainly is not viable in our opinion. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the presenter? Councillor Bell, or sorry, Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the planner. Could you just review again? How did you get to 120 meters of unobstructed view for the driveway?
Yeah, so it's a little hard to see on the image there on your screen, but through the chair. So the extent of the grading is noted on the site development plan that we submitted. This is more of a simplified version of the plan that I provided on my presentation. The site development plan has a lot of contours and it is quite overwhelming. So I don't have the exact distance or the encroachment rather into the adjacent lot, but that hashed area that you see there is that that area would have to be regraded in order to achieve that 120 meter sightlines distance, so that there's sufficient visibility from that access. So I hope that answers my question. And sorry, just to add, I will say that the proposed lot access, and as I mentioned earlier, will be finalized through the access permit process at the consent application stage. But certainly the professional engineer that we have on our team supports this regrading, which would achieve that sightline. So.
Okay, thank you. As long as that engineer report is on file, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Any other questions for the presenter? Seeing none, I hope my comments at your last meeting didn't keep you up at night with the wankiest corner in the county.
A little bit. Oh, that's why it's mentioned in my presentation.
You
here.
mentioned it 4 times.
Yes. Thank you.
So
I just-
you sleep easy with your report. With that being said, I'm looking for a motion to refer it to 7.2 for discussion. Councillor Coleman and Councillor Oakley, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that takes us to number 5 on the agenda, which is minutes from the previous meeting. We have done business arising from those minutes. Obviously, there's none, which takes us to number 7, which is our staff report, 7.1. So we're back to 283 McLean School Road to talk about it. Amanda, do you want to speak before we?
Thank you. Which one is it? Yeah, the font's so small. If you do Control L,
You don't have to tell us where you live. Just your name.
66 Grammar.
Oh.
All right, so thank you. So a major rezoning application has been received for the lands municipally known as 283 McLean School Road from Arcadius IBI Group, so John Aarons, on behalf of the landowner who is Hugh McNeil. In regards to the subject lands and kind of the property location, they are located east of the Brant Road and McLean School Road intersection, south of the Tim Hortons camp. In terms of the existing conditions and structures on the subject lands, there's a single detached dwelling, some accessory structures which are proposed to be severed as they are within that rural residential designation. As John mentioned, there was an original submission that had kind of the 3 new lots to be developed located on the westerly portion of the subject lands, and through the discussions with staff, kind of comments received, and revisions to some studies, the development proposal shifted eastward, which still included a development lot within close proximity to that natural heritage feature. That was in March 2022. An additional resubmission was received, which is the zoning bylaw amendment we are looking at tonight. So in regards to the zoning bylaw amendment, the applicant is proposing 2 vacant building lots with an area of approximately 0.42 hectares, and these are to be zoned rural residential, which implements the designation of the official plan. 1 lot contains the existing dwelling that has an area of approximately 0.62 hectares and an increased accessory structure of 394 square meters. And this is proposed to be a site-specific provision of rural residential -61. And there is also an increased or reduced setback just to recognize the existing setback of the dwelling on the property. In terms of the accessory structure area, our zoning bylaw allows a maximum of 150 square meters or 15%, whichever is the less. So due to the size of that lot, this would represent approximately 6%. So it's greater than the 150 square meters. Sorry, the 6% of the overall. So it's greater than the 150 square meters, but it's still less than the 15%, hence the site-specific provision. In terms of the official plan, the subject lands are designated as rural residential, natural heritage, and agricultural. However, the portion to be developed is designated as rural residential. And then similar to the zoning, the whole entire property is zoned as agricultural and natural heritage, but the portion to be rezoned is currently zoned as agricultural. In terms of my recommendation, I am recommending that the 2 vacant proposals be rezoned to rural residential, and the 1 that contains the existing dwelling be rezoned to rural residential with those site-specific provisions for accessory structure and a reduced front setback. I am also recommending that portion located on the west of the property be rezoned to natural heritage, just as it has been standard practice for the county to rezone buffer areas of that 30 meters to natural heritage, just to ensure that there's no structures to be developed in that area. I do understand that the applicant does have some concerns in regards to that zoning, but I have confirmed that agricultural activities are, agricultural activities are allowed within the natural heritage zone, and they would be able to establish a field access. And then also in terms of the natural heritage zoning, I'm recommending that as this portion is identified as floodplain within the GRCA regulation area. I'm happy to answer any questions the community members may have in regards to my recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Pierce, you're first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So just to confirm, with the applicant's concern about being able to use that portion that is going to be designated natural heritage, he can do exactly what he was proposing to do then, just to confirm that.
Thank you, through the chair. The zoning bylaw does allow agricultural activities in the natural heritage zone.
As well as access.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? The recommendation is before us. We heard from the applicant's representative, Mr. McNeil's representative. Can I get a motion put on the floor, please? Councillor Pierce and Councillor Oakley. Any other discussion? As I said, the recommendation is clear and it's before you. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, if it's okay, I would like to propose an amendment to the recommendation, which is seconded by Councillor Garneau, and it would be to remove the third portion of the recommendation. And if I could speak to that.
Absolutely.
So I guess in reading through the application and the reports, I noted that while staff is recommending that there be this rezoning to natural heritage, it's not being recommended necessarily by the GRCA. So I think it would be pertinent to perhaps default to the GRCA's recommendations. The other thing that I would note is that currently that piece of property is serving as pasture and as hay land, which from my work with the beef cattle industry, pasture and grasslands are indeed incredibly important to the environment and serve as natural heritage features themselves in the habitat and the biodiversity that they create. So my thought would be to leave it zoned agriculture. It's serving its purpose for what it is.
I have an amendment on the floor. I have a seconder in Councillor Garneau. Is there any other discussion before we call the vote on the amendment? Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor. So speaking to the amendment, I think we just heard that we don't need that amendment because they can do exactly what they wanted to do on that land, even though it's designated as natural heritage. So I'm just trying to understand why we need this.
Councillor Kyle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps staff could clarify, but I believe once something is rezoned from agriculture, it's next to impossible to change back to agriculture. So I would leave it, my personal thought.
Yeah. Who wants to speak to that? Who? Yeah. Who wants to speak to that?
Through the mayor, sorry to Councillor Kyle. I can't speak to how difficult that would be to rezone back. The purpose of including this portion of the zoning bylaw amendment is to protect the natural heritage feature. The history here is that there was an environmental impact study that was provided as part of the application. And as the application changed through the process, one of the options, rather than updating the environmental impact study, was to implement a 30-meter buffer as per the growth plan policies. That was agreed to by the applicant's planner, so that's what we proceeded to do in lieu of updating the EIS. The EIS would have recommendations for protecting the natural heritage feature, but in lieu of that, we just implemented this buffer. This is something that we have done in the past, and it is something that we'll likely continue to do while we have that growth plan direction. And I should also note that it is in our draft official plan as well,
adopted, I should say, sorry, official plan, as a sort of a policy direction, and something we've implemented as well through the interim control bylaw in St. George as a new type of zoning provision for creating these buffers between natural heritage and development areas. So sorry for a long explanation, but that hopefully provides some clarity.
Councillor McAlpine.
So just, my understanding is that they'll be able to do what they're proposing to do, okay? But what changing the designation prevents from happening in the future is a building being put on that property. So, and which if you left it as agricultural, they could put a building on that property infringing on the natural heritage protection zone. And this has been a really contentious issue in the community because there is a lot of wildlife in the neighboring properties that would be affected if we were to allow further construction on that particular area. So I think it's important that we maintain that natural heritage feature in this case. So I am not in favor of excluding the part 3 because I believe that it still facilitates what he is proposing at this point. So.
Thank you, Councillor McAlpine. Any other comments, Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll support the motion for an amendment because I think the GRCA is recommending 20-meter buffer, if I'm correct. And I just want to know who trumps who, the GRCA or the county's planning or whatever. And so I have to go along with the GRCA, and it's floodplain. It won't be built on. Simple as that. I know.
Councillor Garneau?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm building on Councillor Kyle and Councillor Coleman's comments. I'm inclined to agree that there's sufficient other protections in place through GRCA and steps in the planning process for a future proposal if it were to come forward. And with that in mind, by rezoning to natural heritage today, we do constrain future farm operations. And while the current use is in fact pasture and hay, we can't foresee what the farmer may wish to do with the land in the future. So I wouldn't want to unnecessarily restrict future farm activities by taking away that agricultural zoning. So I do support the amendment.
Councillor Chambers and then Councillor Pierce.
Yes, just a comment. Not all parts of natural heritage zone areas are regulated areas. The GRCA has regulated areas that are part of this particular buffer, if I understand the application. So there is a buffer that is regulated by the GRCA, and we're extending that we're proposing to extend that into a natural heritage, which isn't regulated. That having been said, the applicant does not want it to be natural heritage. He wants it to be agricultural. And it'll be an agricultural zone with part regulated. So I don't have a problem with the amendment, and I'll go with the wishes of the applicant who wishes not to have it natural heritage.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I need clarification here because I've heard that if we leave it as natural heritage, it could impede potential future farming aspects of it. And I heard that even with natural heritage, you can still do farming things on it. I need clarification here. It's either we can either do the farming activities on the natural heritage, or we can't. And that's going to sway my vote on this one way or another.
Matt, you can maybe help Councillor. Oh, she's got it.
So thank you through the chair. So the natural heritage zone does allow agricultural activities. It does not allow structures. That is the main difference. So an agricultural zone would allow an agricultural structure in addition to agricultural activities, whereas a natural heritage zone would only allow the agricultural activities, no structure.
Okay, I appreciate that because what I heard from the delegation was the fact that there was no inkling of putting any structures on there. It was just for farming. So that seals to me that it doesn't matter whether it's natural heritage or not, they can do their thing. So thank you.
Any other comments before we call the vote on the amendment? Seeing none, call the vote on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? And it's carried. Okay. Yeah. So now we have to vote on the staff recommendation as amended. Everyone's clear? Nothing else to say? All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Which takes us to 7.2, back to 369 Scenic Drive with the Wanky Corner.
Try that again. Good evening, Council, members of the public. This is a major zoning bylaw amendment for lands located at 369 Scenic Drive from Arcadis IBI Group on behalf of the owner, 271200 Ontario Inc., within the geographic township of South Dumfries. The subject lands are located on the north side of Scenic Drive and north of the Stony Brae Drive and Scenic Drive intersection. The lands are rectangular in shape, having frontage along the north side of Scenic Drive of approximately 151.5 meters and an approximate area of 4.1 hectares. There is an existing single detached dwelling on the subject lands. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from agriculture and natural heritage to rural residential with site-specific provision 62, RR-62, and natural heritage with site-specific provision 15, NH-15. The following site-specific is being recommended for the RR-62 zone. Due to species at risk in the area, no building, structures, access, servicing, use, and site alteration shall be permitted unless authorized by the county, and where applicable, written authorization has been obtained under the Endangered Species Act. And the following site-specific is being recommended for the NH-15 zone. Due to species at risk in the area, agricultural use, public park, or private park, small-scale structures for passive recreational uses, including boardwalks, footbridges, fences, and picnic facilities are prohibited unless authorized by the county and where applicable, written authorization obtained under the Endangered Species Act. The rezoning is being sought in order to bring the lands into greater conformity with the existing land use designation and to protect the existing natural heritage feature and for the creation of one new lot. I would like to elaborate on my comment related to the creation of one new lot. So under current conditions, the sightlines were found to be deficient based on the conceptual drawing that was provided for the proposed and existing access. However, after conversation with the agent, applicant, and our engineering department, it was found that there is the opportunity to improve sightlines and to meet the required standards. This can be addressed prior to the consent stage. Once it can be demonstrated that the sightlines are sufficient, I would be supportive of the future lot creation as it is consistent with the relevant planning policies. I will note the lot configuration being proposed, while not consistent in shape, it is consistent in size with adjacent lots and is a result of the recommendations of the environmental impact study and the subsequent implementation of the 30-meter buffer, also known as the vegetation protection zone. The subject lands are designated rural residential, natural heritage, significant wetland, and woodlands and vegetation within the County of Brant official plan, and are currently zoned agriculture and natural heritage within the County of Brant zoning bylaw. At the time of the writing of the report, I did not receive any public comments, and it's my professional opinion the proposed rezoning is consistent with the relevant planning policies as outlined in my report. Thank you and happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions to the presenter, to staff? Seeing none, thank you. I need a motion to put on the floor, please. Councillor Coleman and Councillor Oakley. Any other discussion? You have the recommendation in front of you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. It'll be brought to council for ratification. Good luck with your driveway. And we'll move on. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, it has been ratified. I would like to donate some gravel to your driveway. You're gonna need it when you go in the lake. Anyway, thank you. Which takes us to 7.3, which is, who has that? Who has it? Oh, Shannon, you have it again.
Hello again. This is a major zoning bylaw amendment for lands identified by rule number 2920-0160-103-3506 and legally described as Block 106 on Plan 2M1947 from Arcadis IBI Group on behalf of the owner, Brookfield Residential, in the geographic township of South Dumfries. These subject lands are located on the west side of Oak Avenue. They are irregular in shape, having frontage along the west side of Oak Avenue of approximately 26 meters and frontage along the north side of Wisley Avenue of approximately 4 meters and an approximate area of 312 square meters. The subject lands are currently vacant. The applicant is proposing to rezone the subject lands from residential singles and semis with site-specific provision 18, R2-18, to residential multiple low density with site-specific provision 18, RM1-18. This will facilitate the future construction of townhouse dwelling units. The RM1-18 zone is existing and has site specifics related to lot area, lot frontage, street setbacks, exterior side yard setback, and lot coverage. The rezoning is required to facilitate a future land dedication where Block 106 is to be merged with Block 1 as demonstrated on the above slide. The green hatched parcel is Block 106, which is to be merged with the parcel shown with purple hatching, which is Block 1. These subject lands are designated urban residential and are located within a wellhead protection area within the County of Brant official plan. The subject lands are currently zoned as residential singles and semis with site-specific provision 18 within the County of Brant zoning bylaw. At the time of writing the report, no public comments have been received. In my professional opinion, the proposed rezoning is consistent with the relevant planning policies as outlined in my report. Thank you and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the presenter, to staff? We've talked about this little wedge before. Anyone want to put it on the floor? Councillor Chambers, Councillor Miller. Any other discussion before we call the vote? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Communications, there aren't any other business. There isn't any other than the fact that I do want to mention that at our last council meeting, although I did apologize to Councillor Bell as soon as it happened, I pulled a Judge Judy on Councillor Bell, and I was very loud, and you know what, it wasn't one of my proudest moments, and the reason I'm saying it now is because there was people online, and although I apologized when I did it, there was people online that didn't hear my apology because I did it in camera. So for those that might be watching, that could have been watching the other night, I am sorry for getting loud and kind of cranky on you. I hope that's good enough for you.
Apology accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. We don't have to go in camera. We do have bylaws, and Councillor Coleman has those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Miller, that the bylaw 7523, which is as amended to 80.23, be now read a first time.
Thank you. All those in favor of the first reading? Opposed? Councillor Coleman, if you could do the second reading, please.
Mr. Mayor, moved by myself, second by Councillor Miller, that bylaw 7523 as amended to -80-23 be now read a second time and all preambles and the clauses be adopted.
Any questions to any of the bylaws? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are a couple of bylaws in there which relate to Mount Pleasant, and in the whereas clauses, we talk about an updated water allocation policy to the Mount Pleasant area. Maybe I missed that, but if perhaps staff could just remind me what that updated policy is.
It's the water in Mount Pleasant. Which bylaw is that, Councillor?
7723, and I think the one before it.
23. 7723. There you go.
Yeah. Through the mayor to Councillor Bell, this is a bylaw to remove the holding of specific lands in 6 Bernice Street in Mount Pleasant, and that is because of water allocation being available now for this site. If council recalls, there was a bylaw and allocation policy that operations staff had brought forward a few months ago, outlining that there would be a process for removing holding provisions for like infill type lots within Mount Pleasant based on what was currently available for servicing capacity. This is one of those lots that have gone through that process. And so staff have prepared the holding removal bylaw for council to consider.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, does that mean that there are more to come? Do we have a sufficient availability that more can be released?
I believe through the mayor that there is more to come. I'm not certain on how many at this time. It's something I'd have to talk to our general manager of operations with, but my understanding is there is some capacity for more to come. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, call for the third reading, please, Councillor Coleman. Oh, we didn't vote. Vote. There we go. Now it's the third reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councilor Miller, the bylaw of 75-23 as amended to 80-23 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
All those in favor of the third reading? Thank you. Is there anything else for the betterment of the county of Brant? Councillor Chambers.
Get it, but tonight when I was sitting in the chair, I noticed something that I've never noticed before, but it seems very awkward for Councillor Garneau to have her back to the podium all the time.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that can be moved over so Councillor Garneau does not have to sit there in a very awkward position all night at planning committee meetings. It's just something I noticed.
Yeah.
And if I sat there, I would not want that. So I say it now because I know I forget it.
Okay. It is hardwired into the ground, but it does have a little bit of wiggle room. So we'll do the best we can do. Put it in the middle. We can put Councillor Garneau in the middle, and then you can see everything. Come sit up here.
Admittedly, if I were presenting, I wouldn't want someone 4 feet from my face staring right at me. So
now we know why Councillor Gatward is in traction. She couldn't go around far enough. So, is there anything else for the betterment of the county of Brant? Seeing none, call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Oakley, we stand adjourned to Tuesday,